Welcome to the ITSMTV July 2011 special investigation. This month we're looking at IT outsourcing, identifying some key problems and providing some good guidance on how to avoid these. We will be looking more closely at the wider issues around managed services and outsourcing again in our October programme, which will feature research done by SDI. However, for this programme, we are simply going to look at what the issues are. I'll be joined later by two industry guests for a studio discussion, but first we'll take a look at the current market and some of the challenges thrown up by outsourcing. The IT outsourcing market is a $100 billion market, with most organisations now outsourcing some part of their IT operation, from screwdriver services to programming, hosting and management information. Despite this, we constantly hear of problems, disputes, court cases and many instances of contracts being rescinded and services being restored in-house or insourced. I'm working on two big projects right now that include serious issues in this area. So where and why does this go wrong, often so spectacularly and with such expense? Are the vendors guilty of sharp practices and promising more than they actually deliver, or then charging extra for what their customers expected in the first place? Or are the buyers poor at defining what they want in terms of objectives, outcomes and measures, so that they will always be disappointed and perhaps unfairly critical of their suppliers, who are only doing what they've been asked, even if that's not all that's required? Or is the IT business itself at fault for setting too high expectations of the value of outsourcing, whilst not providing any governance and controls to police the industry? This is a mostly unregulated industry supporting most of the business of the world. Let's see what some key industry figures think.
Most internal IT departments are driven by technical people. That's what they're there to do. Managing a large supplier or multiple large suppliers is a very different skill set, and I think they're looking for that from specialists who've done that elsewhere.
It's not a procurement exercise simply. It's a business decision that should be made about what it is that IT should be doing to support business outcomes. And once you've identified that, you should then decide what it is that you should and shouldn't outsource.
I think the key to a successful relationship is actually to involve the business from day one.
If you're going to engage a third party, you've got to think why you're engaging them. And really, in most cases, it should be that you want their experience, their knowledge of having done this many times before with other customers. Those battle scars of where it worked badly as well as where it worked well are the thing that's of most value.
A lot of people expect the supplier to do things which are best done in-house before you even consider doing an outsourcing deal. Leaving it to the last minute means that knowledge transfer will be incomplete and will actually fundamentally undermine the success of the deal.
We're getting asked more and more by the clients, can you host that? Can you provide some services? Can you provide second line support? Can you provide service desk? And, just as an example, we've grown our internal first line service desk threefold in the last 18 months.
I think the suppliers often fall foul of the good old, deliver the A team to get the deal and then withdraw the A team and stick in the C team to actually put the deal in place.
I think the key thing which distinguishes the successful contract is people understand why they're outsourcing in the first place and keep that in mind, not just through the actual deal, but actually through the delivery of the deal as well.
I think we're going to see the margins in terms of outsourcing engagements fall, and I think that's a typical sign of the times. I think we're going to see customers getting better at buying services. I think we're going to see customers looking to engage more service providers in the bid process. I think they're going to get smarter at selecting which ones are capable of delivering the right service.
Number one is the contract. The client's got to put as much time into that contract as possible, understand what it is they want to see out of that contract. I've seen some really basic mistakes like you have a service that's 7 days a week, but the backed off contract's only 5 days a week, and then you have to live with that for 5 years.
The marketplace itself isn't that cost sensitive at the moment. Everybody's at rock bottom prices. The choice between different outsourcers comes down to quality, not cost.
One of the contracts that I run at the moment, that includes user representatives, business representatives, IT, the whole range. And for me, You know, sometimes that's quite painful because the users tell you exactly how it is. You know, they don't put any varnish on their opinions.
On the outsourcers side, don't promise what you can't deliver, because it will end up damaging the relationship, and with a damaged relationship you've got a long uphill struggle to regain that trust.
I see the industry growing. I mean, certainly we've seen a growth in interest.
Well, I think the thing we forget about out there, there are an awful lot of very large deals which are very successful indeed. They're not sexy, but they're out there delivering value day after day.
My advice to the vendors in that situation really is to take a little bit more of a risk and actually not be worried about suggesting something that's different, and actually explaining why they think it's an appropriate solution.
In terms of bigger trends, the big shift up we've seen in the last 18 months or so is a shift towards a service integration model. This is the idea that you actually outsource a whole raft of technical towers at the same time, your infrastructure, your networks, your applications maintenance, your applications development. Now, they may go to different technical suppliers, but overall you have one supplier who retains end-to-end responsibility for the overall service. In effect, what this means is that you're actually handing over the traditional role of retained organisation to one of your suppliers. Now that's a massively different model to our traditional way of delivering outsourcing.
So it sounds like things are improving, although we still have a lot to do to improve the quality of buying and delivery. What advice can we give to anyone out there wanting to reap some of the benefits from outsourced IT? How can we guide the outsourcers to improve? What sort of industry controls, if any, do we need? I'm joined by two key players from the industry who we featured in the interviews: Matthew Burrows, MD of BSM Impact, and James Finister, an ITSM luminary of Tata Consultancy Services. Firstly, James, we've seen a number of views expressed there about how the market's going. James, what are your thoughts about what the outsourcing market needs to do in the next few years to really grasp the nettle and improve the quality of our accounts and relationships?
Okay, I think we've really got to become more agile. Nobody knows what's going to be happening 2 years, 3 years from now in terms of how we're going to be delivering services. What we do know is there'll still be need to deliver those services, but for mechanisms we just don't know what they are. And I think people have to be flexible and accept that.
So Matthew, we looked at the strategic aspects of this there. What do you think in terms of roles and functions we need to be looking at to develop the quality of these relationships? Are there new roles appearing or that we should have in place to make this work better?
I'm not sure whether it's necessarily all new roles, but certainly some roles that haven't featured in some of the contracts that have got into trouble. And one of the key ones that I'm constantly talking about is business solutions architecture. And I don't mean the technical aspects, I mean the whole business solution. A business solutions architect should be looking at the objectives, the business case, the benefits that are expressed there, and constantly how does my solution actually help deliver those, not just a watered down version of that that's ended up as being expressed as a set of functions and technical capability.
James, from your point of view, we've talked just in terms of these roles, is that something that, or which part of that do you feel that the customer or the buyer should hold on to? Are there rules or guidelines about which parts of portfolio management, which parts of solutions engineering should be held within the customer?
I don't think they're hard and fast rules. I think what we do need is an integrated model which bridges both the supplier and the customer world. Bear in mind that could be multiple suppliers, and you need to know where those borders are between responsibilities for the supplier and the customer. You can't push all the risk out onto the supplier, for instance. I think there is some guidance in terms of governance, and I think that mantra of direct, evaluate, monitor, which comes from ISO 38500, is particularly relevant in the outsourcing world.
Where are we with ISO 38500? Because it seems to be talked about, and it seems to be, I mean, I think we all agree that the fact that it's 6 or 7 pages is a very positive step.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we get that that message out there?
I think it actually goes back to a question you discussed with earlier. This is about the business. And the trouble is, so many outsourcing deals are dealt with within IT, not within the business. And I think we've got to get that standard, what it says, out to CXO level, not just to CIOs.
Matthew, do you think that businesses need to be more IT savvy, or do you think IT needs to be more business savvy? Where do you draw the line?
I think that there was an old concept in, I can't remember which version of ITIL it was, the concept of the waterline.
ITIL 7, was it?
Probably, yes, whichever version number we're talking about. But there is a level of detail that the customer shouldn't need to go below. And when they get into that territory of talking about the technology, they can be in dangerous territory. And lots of assumptions get made, and you can end up muddying the waters. And I think it's a bit of both. The business people have got to understand to an appropriate level, but the IT guys have also got to be able to put their stuff in a business context.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the strategic side and some of the things we need to do. Just from both of you, could you give me some good advice or guidance to finish off with around about what people can do now who are involved in those contracts, and maybe how they can improve the quality and the relationships of them? James, what would you...
Well, you talk about relationships, and let's be honest, relationships is absolutely key here. You need good relationships with your supplier. The supplier needs good relationships with you. That's built on trust. So think about mechanisms you can use to improve that trust. Do you have joint array days with your suppliers and the customers? If you don't have a good relationship with the supplier manager, ask for that supplier manager to be changed. Something we find is really effective is the concept of a captain's table. Well, on Monday morning, we all get together for different partners in delivering the service and have a full and frank discussion under Chatham House rules. And that's very effective. I think the key thing is that 99% of the time, you're part of one team. It's only very occasionally you need to shift into thinking, I'm the customer, I'm the supplier.
Yeah, I'd support that as well, because I think most of the time it's not the technology that makes these things go wrong. It is about people, it's about how they feel about things, how they work together. And this idea of working more as a joint team, even if that team consists of people from many different organisations, ultimately you should be working together to focus on the same set of objectives.
Now, just to build on that, at the same time, you have to be aware that your supplier has got a commercial incentive. You've got your own drivers as a customer. Let's be honest about that, but let's not let that get in the way of relationship.
So the days of let's get the supplier in and hammer them, really...
It's counterproductive, because if you don't recognise that the supplier needs to make a profit, then they're going to be forced to try and make that money somewhere else, whether that's through changing the scope or actually saying things are out of scope and reducing the quality of the overall service. It drives negative behaviour.
And let's be honest, no supplier sets out to deliver a bad service.
No.
Very often when you actually do a post-mortem, and Matthew's talked about going in and sorting out outsourcing contracts which have failed, I know you've been involved with that, it's actually very hard to point the finger at one player. What you often find is both parties misinterpreted the other's needs, desires. Even if you have a contract, there's a set of wording and both parties have interpreted that wording in different ways, quite honestly.
And hopefully that relationship hasn't broken down at that stage. Yeah. And you can actually get people to work together and explain to them why they need to change that focus. Unfortunately, if it has broken down, then you need to take a different approach.
And that's a key point as well. If it isn't working, it's like any relationship. Say so early, don't leave it till it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
So relationship, communications, partnership, business objectives,
people,
a broad church of people.
People and culture and just understanding.
And we're all in business, or certainly the vendors are in business, and we need to understand and appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for their contribution. We will continue this debate in our October programme with the benefit of some new research. I look forward to your company then, and hope you can join us for next month's topic, which is on IT's perceived poor customer service image. Join me then. Goodbye for now.